till shade is gone,
till water is gone,
into the shadow with teeth bared,
screaming defiance with the last breath,
to spit in Sightblinder's eye on the last day.
by my honor and the light.
My life will be a dagger for Sightblinder's heart.
Until the last day. To Shyle Ghul itself.
This is A Dagger for Sightblinder, a podcast focused on all things Wheel of Time, with your hosts,
Sarah Lucas
and Adam Tricola. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Dagger for Sightblinder. May you find shade this day. Sarah,
Adam,
how are you actually doing today?
I knew you were going to say that. I'm actually quite good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good too.
Yeah, I didn't say actually. I just said I just wanted to know how you were in general.
I know. you wanted the rote response.
Yeah, the social contract.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I'm glad we could meet each other's expectations.
Mm-hmm. For now.
So we're getting closer to the end of this book.
I know. It's kind of exciting.
I know. This is a totally new section for you, right? Like you haven't gone past this.
Right. I believe I stopped during chapter 31.
Last time.
Yes, last time. So
you're like, no, this time. Like, no, I didn't read.
This time,
I wouldn't prepare.
I'm going in blind. No. Last time I stopped during chapter 31.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all new territory, essentially. Almost all of this is new territory.
It's exciting.
Yeah. It's really good. So
get to meet the Aiel.
I know. I was so excited.
Good.
So excited. So yeah, this is the thing though, is like now because it's all new, I really am going to have to like remember my viewpoints on things and all that, because there's nothing really to refresh me, you know.
Don't you normally just remember your viewpoints on things? I mean,
no.
Okay, so you're like me.
We're doomed.
Yeah, I just don't remember anything.
Yeah. So
going in blind sounds pretty normal to me.
We're just gonna wing it. Yeah, no, so I think this is gonna be interesting because now also everything going forward is going to be me just completely speculating.
Good.
So yeah.
Me
I like
too.
It. You too. Okay.
Only because I have a bad memory though.
All right, so we're gonna do chapters 30 to 39 today.
We are.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a tiny bit of show news before we start, because we didn't have any last week, so we can have a tiny bit this week.
You're just doling it out.
Like the teensiest amount. Yeah. It's a sliver.
Parcel by parcel. Okay. What's the sliver?
So season 2 has officially finished filming. Everything is done. It's wrapped. And season 3 is rumored. So Amazon hasn't actually confirmed this, but it's rumored that season 3 has already been signed again, or the show's been signed again for a third season. And that filming would start this summer. So basically they have wrapped and will get like 3 months off.
Yeah, they need to hurry the F up.
Yeah, and then go film again. Still no actual confirmed date for when season 2 will start though. Sadly.
Sadly.
Yes, sad. Duh. Sad.
We've been experimenting with the word "sag" lately, guys.
We have not been experimenting with the word.
No, you've been part of the experiments. So
No.
it's we.
Disapprovingly.
You shouldn't have played your hand so extremely by rejecting, because I hate "sag," but your hatred of it so eclipses mine that I find it actually palatable to use it if I know it's gonna bug you. So like you did this to us.
Can't blame me.
Yeah. It's miserable for both of us. I'm like, I hate myself for saying this, but your reaction is so good every time.
Oh man. I just need to not show my hand ever again. Just be a stone wall of nothingness.
You'd be pretty bad at that.
Rude.
Well, what's fun about being a stone wall of nothingness? Someone's like, what are you supposed to be? Like a stone wall of nothingness? Like, oh, I want to hang out with you.
You ever see those like guards outside of the palace in London with like the hats and everything? And they just stand there and
yeah.
and you like go and you do all those weird faces to them and try and make them laugh, and they just stand there and they have no emotional reaction whatsoever. And they're just a stone wall of sadness. Of nothingness. I could not do that job. Anyway.
So you like that's something you're like, I aspire to be that.
I just said I couldn't do it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the book.
Okay.
Gosh.
All right.
Waste my freaking time here.
All right. So getting into the book. Okay, so blanket spoiler warning. Spoiler warning.
Spoil it warning.
For chapters 30 to 39 of the Dragon Reborn, but realistically anything before that, including the first two books and including the entire first season of Wheel of Time.
Very good.
Cool.
For a second I thought you said the Dragon Reformed. I was like he's reforming himself.
Yeah, spoil it warning.
It's like spoil it warning. Oh my gosh.
It almost sounds like I'm saying spoil it, so I feel like I can get away with it. Okay, anyway, so chapter 30.
Gosh. So this is what it's like to interact with a stone wall of nothingness.
Oh man. Okay, so chapter 30, the first toss. So this basically picks up where we left off. We're with Matt. And yeah, he's pretty much just trying to eat as much as possible and gain as much energy as possible before he tries to leave Tarvalin. And he's also like stowing away food. So he's packing like cheese and bread that he can take with him. And Anaya actually notices that he's been requesting more food than he actually needs, because she notices that he's recovering and like getting stronger and all this kind of stuff and doing well. But like he doesn't need this much food because he's not weak anymore. Anyway, so he packs up all of his stuff. He makes sure he has the letter from Elaine for her mother, and he makes sure he has the letter for that they gave him. That's the Amerlin's note, so that he can kind of do what he wants and be able to leave. That's the big thing. And his plan is that he's going to head towards Tyr, and then he's going to, on the way, deliver this note to Queen Mordays. And he realizes when he's leaving that he doesn't have any money. Obviously, well, I mean, he's realized this before. And he decides, and I noticed this and I was wondering this, so I'm going to ask you this. So he decides that he's going to play, like he's going to win dice and play dice to make some money. And he ends up winning every single toss, like that happens. So would that be a Tavirin thing? Like it's just like one of those things that just happens to work out that way because of, like, you just would cast that off as a Tavirin explanation?
So you might. There's a little bit of gray area, at least as far as I understand it. So first off, you're not Tavirin for life necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I did not realize that. Not necessarily born Tavirin, or and sometimes you die Tavirin, sometimes you just kind of lose it or something. But like they make in later books, at least, they talk about that a little bit, and so it does talk about when he's younger how he used to play dice all the time, and he still won. He didn't win every single roll back then, and so it's like he's always been lucky, and that's always been a thing. And so you could kind of attribute that to Tavirin, or just to his general, I don't know, self, like that. There's not like a word to describe it other than maybe he is just built to be lucky somehow. But there's also there's a lot of other factors too. So maybe it's Tavirin kind of manifesting itself in the more extreme things, and I think that that's kind of what they want to push on it. But there's all these other factors. So there's also the fact that he has the old blood and can remember on some fundamental level that he can't even necessarily like bring up past his subconscious, like all the Manetherin stuff, being a general from there and everything. There's also the fact that the dagger might have impacted his luck as well, and that's something that he thinks of. He's like, oh no, is this the dagger? Because someone says that you have the Dark One's own luck, and he immediately thinks maybe it's the dagger. And it's just like an ongoing effect, and that's never really answered. The fact is though that he is to some degree lucky, but he also, I mean, one of my favorite things about him is, yes, he has luck, but he also recognizes the times that he needs to gamble as well. Like, he's smart about it. Like, he's not just, right, oh, I'll just keep doing it forever. Like, he's like, oh, okay, I got to be smart about this and move on to the next tavern in this case. Right. Or sometimes he's like, you know what? It would be better for me if I lost. And when he recognizes that, then he can roll and lose sometimes. Right. Like, it's almost in some ways a willpower thing. And so, it's not the power, there's just some quality about him that makes him lucky. So that's a great question. I don't know that I don't think, to my knowledge, it hasn't been answered. Maybe someone who's, there's about 1 million questions that people asked Robert Jordan and then Brandon Sanderson afterward about the nature of these things. And so it could be sitting in some dusty repository that they just like, oh yeah, he's lucky because of this. But to my knowledge, that's about as clear as I can get, which I didn't realize is clear as mud, as they say. I mean, fair. In Canada. I was in Canada, Canadian saying. No, I was just curious. So I did not realize that that the Tavirin thing was not a lifelong thing. I just assumed it was. So that is really helpful. Anyway. Because I think they talk about at one point, and this is not me spoiling anything in the books, but at some point they mention someone loses their Tavirin-ness. Right. Okay. So okay. I don't know. I don't remember even all the circumstances. I do remember it discussing that a little bit though. So cool. Okay. Yeah. So then he ends up, trying to make his way out of town, and this man is following him as he's heading towards the harbor, and he tries to assassinate Matt, and he has like a dagger at his throat and all this, and they both kind of tumble off this walkway. And, so Matt gambles. Yeah, he exactly that. Because he immediately, like, that's his reaction, is to kind of fall with this guy and take this gamble. And this guy ends up dying because of the way they fell. The dagger goes into his chest instead of into Matt. So, and Matt lands on him and has perfect padding. Yeah. So he's and this is an example of him, like, it's almost like his luck is a skill that he has, and he recognizes he needs to use it. So yeah, it's cool. Like it's like he has a skill to use the quarter staff. Yeah. And he uses that, and then his skill. So he's like, okay, like either I get my throat cut right now, or I gamble and see if maybe I'll die falling, but I may as well die falling instead of just get my throat cut, because then at least maybe I live. Right. Like there's no reason not to. So he recognizes it and goes for it. Right. Exactly. He takes that risk. So, cool. Yeah. And there are people like stalking him, trying to, I really do like he gets into this fever, right? Like and he realizes he's a rich man at some point. He's like, I have 2 huge sacks of gold. Yeah. And just is like, I gotta go. Yeah. and it's like, in a way, you can almost see this as so I don't know, like there's a lot of discussion in this series about fate and about what your destiny is, and about, so like Min can see these viewings, she can see
Right.
things that are going to happen in the future, and then they always happen. Not necessarily in the way people predict, but they always happen. And there's prophecies that are had, and they always happen. And so how much agency do people actually have? And this is a microcosm of that, because he goes into this fever of just gambling, and he can't even hardly remember all the things he did. And it's not like he was drunk, or like, there's no outside force acting on him other than perhaps destiny. I don't know.
Right. How much of it is his own doing and how much of it is just meant to happen.
Right. And it's very unclear about that, but he's kind of just not in control of himself. He's kind of an automaton until he kind of shakes himself free, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm rich. He can remember doing these things, but in some ways, I mean, it's like that old school movie, the movie Old School, where the guy gets up, like they're gonna have a debate, and the guy gets up and says a perfect speech in the debate, and then he like steps down and he wins the debate, and his friends are like, what? You're normally so dumb. And he's like, I just blacked out. What happened? Like, what happened? Like, he doesn't know. He doesn't even have any memory of it. It's like some outside force acted for him. And in some ways, that's what Matt's doing. So I always thought this was interesting, because typically he's actually pretty in control of himself, but in this case, it's almost like the pattern is like, hey, you need money, we're gonna go get you some money.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then he does.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so then in the next chapter, so this is the woman of Tanchico, which is where I stopped reading the last time. Okay, so what the woman of Tanchico is an inn, and it's this inn that Matt heads into after he's tumbled with this man that was trying to kill him. And he gets in there, and Tom is performing in there. He's on a table. He's clearly drunk, and he is like speaking about the beautiful women that he's had in his life before, about Morgaze and about Dina. And then he starts he sits with Matt, and he starts talking to him about Rand and Moraine, and he clearly has some like disdain or dislike towards Moraine and the fact that she's an Aes Sedai, which is fair once you remember his history here. Anyway, so Matt is basically trying to convince Tom to go with him to Camelon, and ends up doing that, and they leave the inn to carry on. And notably, the body of this man that tried to assassinate Matt is nowhere to be found. There are no guards anywhere.
This is a good time to point out, by the way. Yes. Matt notices that the guy, he's like, when he looks at the dead man's face, he's like, oh, he looks so plain.
Yes. That's right.
It's a gray man.
Yeah. So, well, and like that's it. Like Matt's like, who would have been following him? Because Tom explains to him that like the Aes Sedai make it really unpleasant to have like thieves in Tar Valon. So it wouldn't have been a thief or anything like that. So
right, like they must be assassins.
Yeah. So Matt's now like, well, who would it have been? And there's no body anywhere and no guards. So yeah. Creepy.
Who knows? Maybe they carried that dead guy up to Sheriam's bed.
Ugh.
Remember how you were saying that they found a dead gray man? Yeah,
in Sheriam's bed. That's right.
I for the record, I don't know that that's what happened. I'm not even speculating that that's what happened. I just
right. Well, that's what they say.
A gray man didn't just like lay down in her bed and die. So
that's not where he chose to just like have his final moments.
No, that's a narratively uninteresting situation. Like It might happen in real life, but that's not a thing.
Oh man. But yeah, so that's that. They've left, and Matt's noticed this guy's not there, and it's super creepy. Cool. Any other thoughts in that chapter? I think the main thing is like Matt and Tom are together again.
Reunited.
Reunited.
Yeah. And Matt eats like 3 full chickens.
Yeah, which is a lot of chicken.
Right. Well, because they take great pains to talk about how much he eats, because he needed all of that to heal himself from the dagger.
So okay, so then the next chapter, the first shift. So basically Matt, when he's realized that like this body is nowhere to be found in the last chapter, and is all like, well, who would have been found? I think it wasn't at the end of that chapter or the beginning of this one. He's basically made the decision, like, we're leaving first ship, like we're getting out of here, like this is
immediately
sketch. Anyway, so they head down to the wharf right away, and there is this ship that is already unfastening and leaving, and they're like, we're gonna get on this one. He ends up having to show his letter that is not his letter, it's from the Amarylline seat, but
it's his now.
It's his now, but it wasn't his originally.
his re-gifted letter.
Yeah. So he shows this so they can go, and they end up having to like this boat is pulled away. They actually have to like run and jump onto the deck of the boat to get onto it, of the ship. And the captain kind of like makes these remarks to like have a couple of his crew members come up and throw them back into the harbor and not let them on the boat. So Matt ends up showing him the letter as well from the Amarylline seat to be like, hey, like let us have passage here, and you know, we can pay you gold if you can take us safely to Erangel. And this captain, I thought this was so funny that he's like, yeah, I'll give you however many meals a day, and you can have my own cabin if you give me 5 gold coins, like just an obscene amount of money. 5 each. And Matt just starts counting it. Like he's like, okay, yeah, no problem. Just starts counting these gold coins. Like, no big deal. It's great.
I know. Well, it's things like that make you like Matt, because he's like, you think you're better than me, but screw you, man. Like, here's my like, gold. Like,
he's
count
like,
it.
all right, fine. Here you go.
Call you on it. Sure.
Totally. That's exactly what it is. Anyway, so they find their cabin, whatever, and he fills Tom in on everything that's been going on, and Tom doesn't believe him and this whole thing. And long story short, Matt can't sleep that night. He hears footsteps outside, and these 2 men end up coming into the cabin. And Matt fights them. He kills them with his quarterstaff, and then he goes outside and he kills another man that's up at the tiller. And Tom ends up coming out, and he throws a knife at another man, killing him, of a man that like Matt missed. And then the captain is all furious and comes aboard, and Tom explains like, hey, like we just saved your ship from river brigands, like you should probably reconsider how much we've paid you. And that was when this first happened, when these men were coming in, it took me but until this moment to fully understand what was happening, because at first I thought the captain was like sending his crew members to go kill Matt and Tom.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, like what is going on here? And then
that would make sense though on some levels, like
like maybe like he was annoyed,
or he sees all that money and he's annoyed that he's not in his room anymore. He's like, why don't we just dump these guys, take their money and dump them? That would make sense, right?
So at first I was like, this is super weird, and then it kind of like registered what was happening. Anyway,
but one of those guys is identified as someone who was in Tarvalin and was stalking Matt, trying to rob him earlier, or presumably, according to Matt, trying to rob him. But we know that. Well, I don't know. We know what we know. Like they've been, they're hunting him though. Yeah, they're just following, and hunting is probably a better word. Yeah. Well, I like Matt, like he's sneaky here too. Like he goes up on top and he talks to the person who's like when it's too dark and he knows that they can't tell who he is, so he whispers, he's dead, or I killed him, or something like that.
Yeah,
And
just to make it seem like it's the other guys.
Yeah, and then the guy's like, oh good, I hope he squealed. It's something really unpleasant.
Yeah,
and Matt's like, all right, I'll kill you too, no worries.
And move along. Oh man. Yeah, so then at the end of this chapter though, we switch to Rand, which like it's weird. This whole chunk of chapters, I forgot that Rand was a point of view character because there's just so much going on with the other characters, and Rand is just hanging out playing a flute at weddings and wondering about his dreams and why people keep coming and kill him in his dreams. And
so I love that you said wondering about his dreams. He's also wandering about his dreams.
Yeah,
like he's wandering in them. Like that's in a way that's how he's like, because we'll talk about this in a little bit. Like this is how he's keeping ahead of Perrin, even of Moiraine and Perrin. Like that's he's actually somewhat in the dream, like in that Tel Enriad, like keeping ahead of people that way. Like he's wandering through his dreams, not just wondering about them. So
yeah.
Anyways, sorry.
But he is. You're right. And it's just funny because he's, doing Rand things, and I feel like everyone else is having all the action.
Yeah. They're getting all the action.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting though. He does recognize the fact and wonder about the realization that he feels more concern about Min and Elaine over Nynaeve and Egwene, which is humorous to me because he's known Min and Elaine for a hot minute, and Egwene and Nynaeve have known him, presumably their entire lives. So it's just fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
Is this the end of the chapter that I was telling you can't read? That like I had looked something up.
No, it was chapter 36, and that reminds me that I haven't looked at it yet because I just ignored it entirely. So I haven't actually even looked at it. Can I look at it?
You can.
I can wait till we get to chat. I remember you saying it was chapter 36 I had to get past.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so yeah, we could talk about it when we get to 36. Okay.
Cool. So the next one is Within the Weave. Yeah, and this is exactly kind of like what you were just saying. Perrin and Loyal Marine, they can't catch up to Rand. They just keep trying to catch up to him. And he's been ahead of them, and they're going through all of these towns, and they're seeing that Rand has obviously been there. He's leaving like a trail of events in his wake, sort of thing. And they find his horse on the side of the road dead, which is sad.
Oh, his horse.
Yeah. Horse, yes. His horse. His animal.
Okay.
So they do enter though this town, and Remen and Perrin can smell that something is bad, but he can't figure out what it is. So yeah, anyway, they make their way through the town. They see this Aielman hanging in a cage in the town square, and Perrin remembers Min having that viewing, like you said, where they come true, where there would be an Aielman in a cage for Perrin. And that would be like a turning point for him, or a pivotal moment in his life. And they end up going to this inn in the town, and there's a lord there who's talking about how he caught this Aielman, and he mentions that there were white cloaks, which makes Perrin a little paranoid because of past history. And he ends up locking eyes with this girl across the inn, just kind of keeps catching her eye, and she's got short dark hair and a abnormally large nose. So
yeah,
just as so that's that. They're in town, they're trying to find Rand, I guess.
Well, they've there's the hunters are talking about how they killed a bunch of Aiel savages.
It's all
And
lovely.
well, so the thing that I really enjoy in this, and you'd have to have read it already to actually enjoy it, but uh, you just have to think how internally Lan is just rolling his eyes the hardest he's ever rolled them. To hear these guys saying there's 20, there's like 10 men and they fought 20 Aiel and they killed all of them except for one they took prisoner,
Right.
or whatever. And as we'll find out, like that is just categorically false in there's so many different reasons. And but Perrin doesn't know. He's like, oh, okay, that's okay, I guess they're good at fighting. Like he just kind of believes them. And Lan doesn't say anything, but like clearly they're full of crap, because from Lan's perspective, he's just like, okay, like go drink another one, buddy.
Right. He's like, nice try.
Yeah. So just imagining how the disdain that Lan must feel for these people is just kind of amusing on like a macro level. So
that's a really good point, because I didn't really think about it from that point of view, because like you're basically a parent's point of view this whole time. So you're just kind of seeing what's happening in his mind. I didn't even think about how Lan would be like, oh, you guys are a bunch of morons.
So this isn't spoiler in the book A New Spring. So it's the prequel book about how Lan and Moraine end up together. It starts at the very end of the Aiel War.
Okay.
So he's leading men against Aiel and he's fighting them.
Ooh. Okay. So he's really like got a good mindset here then.
Yeah, and he's got a like the Aiel, like at one point they're gonna fight, and then the Aiel like back away for a reason. I won't get it all into it, but they also like salute him out of just respect, because they have a name for him. Even like he fought them so well that they respect him to the point that he has his own name among the Aiel. Like, it's really cool, and we'll see that eventually. But like, if anyone knows how to fight Aiel and what they're capable of, it's like Lan. There's no greater expert unless you're an Aiel,
Right.
So if any wetlander can tell, it's going to be him. And I don't know, it's just so it's fun to think about these sorts of things, I guess, from like a reread perspective.
Right. Totally. Okay, so then the next chapter, a different dance. So we're still with the group with Perrin and them. And Perrin's kind of like having this realization this girl's like locked eyes with him, and he's wondering if she knows what his yellow eyes mean, which is humorous to me. Because I found it a little bit humorous, because it just highlights this like self-conscious side of Perrin that is, I feel like we don't see it very often, so it's intriguing. But anyway, so that they end up making this fuss to the innkeeper to like be shown to their rooms and all that, and he's all excited because Loyal's there, and there's an Ogier, and there's an Ogier bed upstairs. He can get his own bed, and like this whole thing, which is hilarious. But he does mention to them that someone is proclaiming that there is a dragon, or proclaiming the dragon in Gildon. And
Gildon.
And
sorry, I've been watching Cobra Kai too much.
But he does say this, and then Lan and Perrin kind of deduce that it's Missima is this dragon that's being proclaimed. And eventually Perrin makes his way outside just to kind of like get away from it all, and he ends up lowering this cage and lets this Aielman out, which is fun, pivotal moment for him.
Yeah, but I thought this level, so I'll be the first person to admit there's not a ton of like realism in this. That's not the kind of novel it is. One person, like there's this really funny scene at some point in one of the books where a person says like, only in a story could one man face 10 and live to tell the story. And then he goes and does that exact thing. Like he goes and kills all 10, and it's like it's just fun. It's like the author thumbing his nose at himself.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, yeah, only in a story. Lucky
Mhm.
you're in a story, bud.
No, but like
But
that's like this. Like no one would go over and let this guy out.
well, so he lets him out. I think this is part of the destiny thing too, because
Mhm.
he thinks something. He says, I have to do something, don't I?
Mhm.
Like he's because someone told him about he's going to see an Aiel at, like Min had saw the viewing of him, an Aiel in the cage. I have to do something now, right? Like there's this expectation of destiny, and but then so you have this weird like metaphysical situation of or whatever you want to call it, of is it destiny, is it free will, is it whatever? And then so he lets him out, and then he's like, go on, run, be free. And the guy's like, dude, I can't freaking walk. And like there's like this level of realism that they bring into it of like I can't, I've been in this cage for forever, and I can't move my legs. Like I have to get feeling back in my legs.
Yeah, which is awful.
Yeah, well, like what they were doing to the man is just atrocious, and it's kind of a glimmer of the dark side of this world, which is what we see in the show so much. That in general, though, they do a good job of dressing it up and making everything happy and cool in the book.
Mhm.
But yeah, like villagers who are capable of taking any human and doing that
Something's up.
and letting their kids throw rocks at them
Yeah.
in a
Oh.
cage, it's just awful.
Oh. Um. Yeah. But he does let him out, and he
Mhm.
introduces himself as Gal.
Gall.
Um.
Mhm.
And but it's short lived because the white cloaks come around the corner and see that he's out. He's
Mhm.
out of this cage.
And then the unrealism comes back in, and
Yeah.
Gall, who can't walk,
Can now
goes
run.
with Perrin, and just butchers the
Yeah.
white cloaks.
The two of them just go and
Mhm.
kill them, and yeah, however many there are. And then Perrin just like goes on back to the inn. He sees the girl again. He bumps into Lan, and Lan's like, "Oh, like are all those dead white cloaks you're doing? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on?" And then they realize Lan realizes they got to get out of there, and tells them that we're gonna go to the harbor. So, yeah. So the next chapter is the Falcon, which I right away when I saw this chapter title, when I heard it narrated, I was like, okay, so we had like the Ioman in the cage, and now we've got the Falcon as a title. So
Yeah.
it's coming. Anyway, so Perrin tells Loyal that they're leaving, and Lan tells Moraine they're leaving, and they all go down. They get horses out of the stables, and they all head down to the docks.
And Loyal's all pissed off because he can't sleep on his sungwood bed. Poor
Right.
guy.
Well, I mean, would you not be like, I feel like I would, if I was going somewhere where people were kind of like fearful of me, for lack of a better term, and you are always kind of the odd man out, and then there's clearly somebody that you've gone somewhere, and now this guy is so excited that you're there and they have stuff for you.
Mhm.
You'd be excited and then annoyed that you don't get to utilize it, I think.
No, I totally get it.
I get it.
I feel bad for him, really.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's almost just funny.
It is. It's sad.
It's
It's funny
like,
sad.
oh, Loyal, will you ever have anything good in life?
Poor Loyal.
Mm.
Oh, poor Loyal. But yeah, so they get on this boat, and they are about to leave when this girl jumps aboard, and she's like, yeah, I'll go as far as he's going, and points to Perrin, and you realize it's the same girl
Yeah.
from the inn, and you're like, man, girl's bold. But
Her
she
nose,
does.
her nose is bold.
Her
I think
nose is bold.
They describe her nose as bold. So.
But she explains though, and this is great, because this whole time, Perrin and Moraine, or not Perrin and Moraine, but Moraine and Lan have kind of been hiding who they truly are. And she's like, yeah,
Man, we totally skipped over something. That's somewhat hilarious. It's Perrin being so disturbed and like so like he's been thinking about so many different things that he's so distracted. He just walks in on Moraine.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, we don't know exactly what he sees, but it's like he almost walks in on her topless, maybe, or at least in a situation that he wouldn't find like socially normal or acceptable.
Right. I think was she like getting out of the bath or something, maybe?
Well, she had her like robe loose or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he asks all these, he's like, well, I'm not gonna go anywhere anyways, like
I'll just ask these questions.
But then at some point he's like, what about that girl? She was been staring at me in the common room, and she's like, dude, you're like attractive. Like you have to realize you're an attractive young man. Of course she's going to be checking you out.
Yeah.
I just a really funny conversation, and I thought it was worth rewinding for just a minute.
Yeah, it is. No, you're right. I completely forgot about that, which is hilarious because Perrin's so awkward.
Yeah, he's like, oh my gosh. But he keeps like thinking about her kind of more as a woman for a little bit. He's like, oh man, she is attractive, but no, she's like he's just so doesn't know how to process any of it. And frankly, I don't know if I could do any better. It's just funny. It's a relatable moment, I guess.
He's just so what's like a deer in headlights.
Yeah. Funny. Okay, so
it is
back to the boat.
Okay, so the boat. So she gets on there and she, she says like she's figured out the others. Like she knows Moraine's an Aes Sedai and Lan's obviously the warder and obviously loyal to Ogier. But she can't figure out Perrin, and it's like she's got to figure Perrin out because it's bugging her. And she says like she's a hunter and she is wanting to find the Horn of the Lear, and she thinks they can help her find it. And Perrin's like, well, it's probably already been found because it has.
Yep, he totally knows.
Yeah. So, but she introduces herself and says her name is Mandarb, which makes Perrin laugh because that's Lan's horse's name. But then she says like what her real name is, and that which is Zareen, and she hates it. So she just arbitrarily decides to call herself Fail. Fail.
They pronounce it Fail.
I can never. Which means falcon.
Yeah.
And like
and this is bah!
Yeah, and Perrin's like almost falls over when he's walking when he remembers this, because that's the thing, like Min's viewing was, she said it was a female falcon. So anyway,
so this is Tavirin at play. You can kind of point at it. It's a Tavirin moment because so you have to think, how long did it take her to get? I guess she's not that far from Ilion right now, but she's clearly been out and adventuring for a while, and she's decided to call herself Mandarb. And just like he's like, oh, well, that horse is named Mandarb. And honestly, if I'm like, hey, my name's Adam, and someone's like, oh, that horse is named Adam, I wouldn't be like, well, crap, I have to change my name.
Right.
Like that's just not going to happen. Like that's a pretty dumb name for a horse anyways. So but she just capitulates, and she seems like this really strong-willed individual, but she just immediately she's like, oh, okay, so here's my real name. Oh, okay, I'll just rename myself to this.
Yeah.
Based off of a random interaction with a stranger. It's not even someone whose opinion she necessarily values. It's just this stranger who happens to be Tavirin.
Right. And now and she just happens to pick the name of that would coincide with this viewing. Yeah.
It's fun.
So much fun.
The funnest.
Okay. So this is chapter 36. So this is the part where you told me not to read that thing until
at the end of it. Okay.
At the end of it. So okay. So daughter of the night. So Perrin ends up falling asleep on the boat. He's in his room, and he
Mhm.
goes into Tavirin Riyadh and sees Hopper, which is awesome. But Hopper takes him to this gathering of dark friends. They've been called there by Ishmael, and he is mad because they haven't completed their tasks. Matt didn't die in Tar Valon, so
Mhm.
he didn't get assassinated. And afterwards, him and Lanfear show up, or Lanfear shows up, and they begin talking, and he questions her loyalty, which, I mean, I remember listening to this and also questioning her loyalty, because she comes across as very self-serving here. Like, she only cares about what she wants, and which is interesting that he then questions her loyalty, and she kind of has to like what's the word I'm looking for, like,
Just to reaffirm her loyalty.
Yeah, that's the word. Thank you. And just reassure him that there's no need to be doubtful or whatever. Anyway, but then Perrin ends up recognizing her as the woman who was in his dreams earlier on beforehand.
Yeah,
which is great. And then he ends up stumbling into Rand. So this is exactly what you were saying, where like Rand is wandering around in here, and Perrin's doing the same thing, and Rand
wandering around.
Yeah. But Rand tries to attack him because he thinks the Dark One is still trying to get to him through his dreams. So he thinks like Perrin's not actually Perrin, which ends up waking Perrin up, because he ends up getting like, I think it's burnt with fire or something.
Okay.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. So he tells Moraine about this dream when he wakes up, and she doesn't give him any information as per usual. But she does think, she does let him know she thinks some of the Forsaken have escaped from Shai Ogul. And then we go to Rand's point of view again. And he realizes that he is actually in his dream, and it was Perrin and not, the Dark One. And he needs to be more careful when he's dreaming. But this group ends up approaching his campsite, and he just kills them. And
they're like, I hope it's okay if we stay with you.
Yeah, and he's like, no.
Oh, he says, yeah, that's fine. And then with his mouth, he says that's fine, and then with his sword, he says, nah. Yeah,
just kills them, and also like configures their bodies to be like in a kneeling position. Which I thought was an interesting, I don't know why, but I just thought it was interesting that was, I don't know if it's important to know, but he does this, and he takes one of their horses and rides off into Tyr. But we learned that one of the men had a, bland looking face, and was clearly a gray man.
Yeah.
So can I look at this thing now?
Yeah, so this is the sort of thing I was telling you about earlier, of like, people ask Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson these questions, and sometimes they answer them really specifically and in really great detail, and sometimes they're a little more vague, and this is one that's a little more vague. But so it's like, because there's never any time that for sure if these guys are actually dark friends, or if Rand just like randomly slaughtered 10 people.
Right.
10 innocent people. So I looked it up, and someone had asked Robert Jordan this question. So were they really all dark friends? Was that 11th man really a gray man, or did Rand just count wrong? And Robert Jordan's answer is, he said that it's not supposed to be clear to the reader exactly what's going on. What is supposed to be clear is that there was definitely a gray man in the party, but whether or not Rand knew that before he lopped off their heads, we're not supposed to know. It's supposed to be unclear whether Rand is just very observant or whether he's on the brink of madness.
Which is fair.
Right. Well, this is another point of destiny, really. Like, this is another, like, what is controlling Rand right now? Is it himself? It's like the same fever that's gripped Matt that when he went gambling is very reminiscent of what is going on with Rand. Like whenever we see his viewpoints, it's all just like kind of just madness and crazy and frenetic. Like I gotta do this thing that I have to do. I have to do this thing. I guess I'll kill 10 people and move on.
Well, it's his viewpoints here have been very sporadic and very like just chaos. You're just kind of like, what's going on with, like, what are you doing? And then before you can even, I almost feel like before you can even wrap your mind around what's happening with Rand and what he's trying to do, it's done. You're not in his point of view anymore, and you're back with somebody else. It's almost like maybe this was done intentionally by Robert Jordan, but I mean, obviously it was, but it creates this really jarring sensation as a reader that you can't get into a rhythm with Rand. And it's almost like Rand can't get into a rhythm with himself either. And he's just jarring all over the place. So it's this duplicate effect.
Yeah, it's just a mess. You're like, I'm kind of glad we're not getting that many viewpoints of Rand this book.
Right.
Yeah, and Rand is like, I don't know. I thought Egwene was in my dreams. I don't know. Did I attack her? I don't care. Let's just move on.
Right. And then you're gone to somebody else.
Yep.
Awesome.
This scene always reminds me that we used to have this joke. I remember there's this guy who was super unreasonable on some forum at some point. Me and my friends, this is in high school, like we were laughing so hard because people were trying to debate. There was like a board about ninjas, like about the nature of being. And so, people are talking about being a ninja, and people are like, oh, being a ninja is all about martial arts and, only using it for defense and all this. And there was this guy who was just trolling all of them. And I remember like there was all these people who were like trying to debate him in good faith, but their arguments were so lame. And this guy just trolling the hell out of them. And at one point, he's just like, this one time, like a ninja was at this restaurant, and a guy dropped a spoon, and the ninja killed the whole town. And like me and my friends, like we couldn't stop laughing about that one like entry in that on the, because it's just this troll, and it was early on, so people like weren't as quick to recognize what he was doing.
Right.
And and this just reminded me that scene with Rand. Like one time, like they asked to borrow to like stay in the same campsite, so he killed the whole group. Like, it's a little bit dark, obviously, but I don't know. It always, for some reason, those two are linked in my mind now.
But it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, people are like, oh yeah, ninjas only use their power for knowledge and defense and all this stuff. And he's like, no, this one time someone dropped a spoon and he killed the whole town. So it's so unreasonable.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Oh, Rand, you're going crazy.
Crazy.
Okay, so the next chapter, Fires in Carrion. So now we're back with Egwene and them, and they are basically just passing through villages and towns, and every village and town that they've passed through has been burnt, and there's no people in them that they can find. But sailors, as they're going through, all the sailors are bowing when they see her ring, which I thought was noticeable. So that was fun. But anyway, she's been having all these dreams about Rand and Matt and Perrin, and there's been one with Min, and she wants to figure out how they're going to get into the Stone of Tyr. But she does have what I thought was interesting. She did have a dream about a man following Matt, and it was phrased as something along the lines of like a man who wasn't really there. So that's a nice little way of describing the gray man, I thought.
Right.
He's there, but he's not really there. And she realizes that there's this gray man going after Matt. But anyway,
what can they do?
They can't do anything. They're on a boat, but they're on this boat, and then the boat suddenly stops because I don't want to say crashes, but it hits another sunken ship, and they are stuck now, so they can't really go anywhere. But they decide they're going to walk along the riverside instead.
Yeah. Good idea. Good plan.
Which I believe the captain does try to stop them from doing this. And they're like, no, it's fine. We'll just walk along the riverside. And
they're like, do you realize that we are Aes Sedai and wise beyond all mortal comprehension, Captain?
Yeah. So they do that, and then they go for a little stroll along the river, and a figure steps out dressed in all brown.
Who does?
Just a figure. We don't know yet.
Oh.
We don't know yet. We know in the next chapter.
Okay. What's the next chapter?
Maidens of the Spear, which I was so excited about.
Awesome.
Also, when I heard that title. Yeah, so Egwene is immediately surprised by this and startled and starts channeling, which Elaine also, like, she, kind of grabs onto Sidar, and Elaine also does a similar thing. And then they realize that this woman is about Egwene's age and, is being relatively calm. So Egwene tries to calm down, but she doesn't let go of Sidar. Elaine does. And it's interesting because, Egwene kind of has this, I can understand why she doesn't, because of what's happened to her already with the Shan-Chan. So it's just like this, it's almost like a PTSD moment of sorts for her in a way.
Sure. Well, yeah, she feels threatened.
Yeah. Anyway, but she does know that this woman has similar characteristics and traits than looks like Rand, and they realize that she is an Aiel, and her name is Avienda. She introduces herself. She asks if they are, I thought this was clever. She asks if they are Aes Sedai, and Nynaeve says that they are women from the White Tower.
Okay.
So she doesn't explicitly say that they're Aes Sedai, but doesn't say that they're not Aes Sedai either.
Right. A very Aes Sedai answer.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting, especially coming from Nynaeve, because Nynaeve's been the one who's been so stubborn about everything.
She has been. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway. But she does say that, Avienda says that she needs their help because one of their companions that they're traveling with is hurt. And Nynaeve agrees that she's like, yeah, we can come and we'll try, essentially is what she says. She's like, I can't make any promises, but we can try. And then they notice that there are two other women that are there who end up standing up that surprise them again. And one of them lowers their veil, which is when I think it's Elaine that fills Egwene in on the they lowered their veil, so they're not going to attack, basically, because they're not
right. Yeah,
they're not in battle.
Yeah, so and we saw it previously with Perrin and Gaul, when they went to fight, Gaul strapped his veil up before he went to fight the White Cloaks.
Right.
Which can be easily lost in the, with all the madness that's going on, but it's, yeah, that's part of their custom. If they're gonna fight, they have to wear a veil.
Right. So Egwene is obviously worrying, though. She's still clearly very concerned that these women are going to kill them, especially if Nynaeve can't heal their friend. But these other two women introduce themselves as Bane and Chiad, and they explain to Elaine and Egwene about being wed to the spear, and that you can leave it, you can choose to leave and have a family and a husband and all this, but you can't take it back. Once you leave it, you can't go back to it. Which I thought was a nice little thing. Anyway, so they get there to this other woman who's been hurt.
Men can have a kid and they can go back to the spear. But,
yeah. Great. Double standards. Love them.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Love them.
Really cool. Yeah, as a guy, I don't approve.
But so this girl, Dylan, has been injured, and Nynaeve immediately is annoyed that they have moved her and that, potentially made it worse. And it's funny because Nynaeve's just trying to make herself angry so that she can channel, and she's not angry enough yet to do it anyway. And she's gathering herbs and she wants water and all this kind of stuff. And they make comments on her using herbs to heal, which she snaps back at and eventually is able to channel later on. But what was also interesting here with this whole interaction is Aviendha does say out loud that they wouldn't hurt an Aes Sedai, and they definitely wouldn't hurt another woman. And Elaine ends up kind of regurgitating things aloud that she already knows, and she's saying them for Egwene to hear. And she's saying them like, right, you wouldn't hurt us unless we hurt you first, unless we did something first, then you wouldn't do that. And she's basically just trying to get Egwene to let go of Saidar so that she doesn't lose control and do something silly. But anyway, so while all this is happening, Nynaeve is able to make herself angry enough that she can channel and heal this girl Dylan. And she just kind of is like, all right, change her wound and finish bathing her, and we can redress her wound and make sure she's dressed. And when she wakes up, she's gonna be really hungry, so we gotta feed her.
Yep.
So.
Yep, they learn a bunch about Aiel.
Yep, tons. This was like a lengthy, tons of info, and it was great.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's all good. Okay, so then chapter 39, the last one, threads in the pattern. So Nynaeve is, she wants to keep going. She wants to know if there's a ship nearby in Jareen that they can get on, and Egwene and Elaine are also talking about, they keep saying he who comes with the dawn, and if they know who that is, and they've kind of decided that like it's Rand most likely, and he does look like an Aiel, and Egwene even recognizes the fact that he was raised by Tam and his wife, and it's very obvious that it wasn't their son. Anyway, but then something ends up hitting her and she's knocked unconscious and wakes up, and they're in this like hut they've been taken to by men, and they've taken off their rings, so they obviously know if they're Aes Sedai. And Elaine is really hurt, so that Nynaeve does have to channel to heal her, and she's able to because she's angry enough to do this. But there are Murdral in the other room, and they can see the ring that Nynaeve wears that Lan gave her, and they know that these are the ones that they have been hunting for. Basically, same idea as like people hunting for Matt and whatever, they're hunting for the girls too. But then Aviendha and the other Aiel show up, and they kind of bust in there, and there's Nynaeve and them bust out of the room. There's this whole fight, and they're attacking the Murdral, which Dylan is killed by one of the Murdral. So Nynaeve kind of wasted her efforts in healing her there, which is unfortunate. But yeah, and Aviendha explains that she pretty much just followed them in order to find where they were, but they end up leaving after this, and they go to Jareen.
Yeah.
So this is just another interesting little, somebody tries to snag them and foiled again.
So yeah, like what? It just makes me laugh. Like you have to think the Amyrlin, if she knows about these interactions, is just cringing. She's like, okay, first you just stumble into a bunch of Aiel, and they happen to be okay with that, and then you just get slinged from a distance by a bunch of non-power wielding dudes, and like you get saved by the Aiel. You get lucky, basically. But I do like the idea. Like they showed two scenes in a row, kind of the Aiel at in a fight, and they're like, yeah, we're not even gonna back down for the Murdrel, like we're just gonna kill them. And they're like, yeah, those 3 Murdrel might have killed 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 of us, and that would have been cool. Like we don't want to,
Right.
we didn't want that. We're glad that they used the power on them. But like it, I really liked how also, like when Perrin was talking to Gaul, he's like, they didn't attack 20 Aiel, did they? Like you didn't have 20 guys. And Gaul's like, is that what they said? No, it was like just me and my buddy. And like,
yeah.
And we killed like the whole group except for like the couple who captured me because we were caught unawares.
Right.
Like they were the ones who kind of got ambushed a little bit. And yet the Aiel, like that's how good they are at fighting. Like they'll, Murdrel are supposed to be this really scary, crazy, hard to beat foe, and the Aiel are just like, you know what, we're just gonna kill you anyways.
Right.
So
no worries. And then we'll go have a nap or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the 10 chapters.
All right. So
yeah,
10 more chapters next week.
Yeah, so next week we'll do 40 to 49.
All right.
Another 10.
All right. Shall we call it good?
Yeah, that's it. That's all. So no final thoughts.
I seldom have thoughts like you.
I know. All right. So next week, chapters 40 to 49. Thank you everybody for listening. May you always find water and shade.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for watching.